Alright. Well, after that last interview, random portal, maybe this time we should actually try pulling someone in. I think I'll give it a shot. I might be getting a bit rusty at this point.
Go for it.
Alright. This one looks like an interesting character. Let's give him a go.
Okay.
And hello.
Hello. I'm sorry. I must have wandered in here and sleepwalking. I suppose I'll just be right out.
Maybe I am a bit rusty. I might have pulled from the land of the dead.
No. I believe this one was the one you were looking for. We actually have brought you here to ask you some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have anything of interest. Oh, great and powerful, toxic one and company.
Yes, no need to be worried. We just want to ask you some questions about your life. Get to know you a bit.
I may be old, but I've met green dragons before. Yeah, you are mighty and terrifying and cunning.
Oh, thank you.
I suppose I have no recourse to abandon your plans on my own terms. So, yes, ask your questions. I'll answer as well as I can. Please do let me pass home safely when you're done with me.
Absolutely.
There's no need to worry. We mean you no harm.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah. Apologies then.
First, let me welcome you to the Delegation of Dreamers. Would you like a seat?
Yes, but my old bones and my knees in particular have trouble. Yes, I would like a seat.
Here, let me get one of the kobolds to bring you a properly cushioned chair. Jeremy, could you be a dear? Thank you. There you go.
Oh, this is plush. What is this? This real leather is very nice. Thank you.
It's actually a very fine moss.
It's very interesting. If you don't mind a question of my own, what's the makeup of that? I have some light biological leanings. I've never quite seen a moss cultivated like this before.
Well, honestly, it's a moss that's been lost to time. This is the realm of forgotten memories. Many things that have been forgotten or lost end up here. One of which being that moss.
I see. What would a lord, trio of lords of such a magnificent and prestigious place want with a lowly old me?
Oh, we actually... Well, I don't know the motivation of the other two, but I like to ask questions to people that we pull in so that they aren't forgotten, and so that we learn a little bit more about the worlds that they come from and what they have done in their lifetimes.
I see. That sounds lovely. Collection, a library of sacred and memorable things.
Yes.
Something like that. Brilliant, then, sure. I apologize. I'm still nervous.
I have a question for you. It seems that you have a tie to a deity of arcane magic. Would you be able to tell me the name of them? I'm not quite familiar with them.
I do follow Azuth, of course. I mean, he's a patron of all arcane casters, in particular the wizardly. But I find them dull. I know that's quite rude of me to say. It's deriding a large group of my peers, but they all just prattle on about the same equations. I think magic is so much more interesting and expressive than equations. It's really feeling and reaching into, learning to emote with it. But Azuth, I'm not an astounding Azuthian, but I do follow the recommended release days most of the time.
Well, you seem rather scholarly.
Yes.
Mass, do you teach, or is it just going on expeditions?
No, I am a teacher, first and foremost. Dr. Gami, Hrafntýr, professor of the lifeblood. Well, I call it that, but everyone calls it something else. More or less, I'm a fractured piece of a conjuration specialist. I like teleportation. I like wind magic. Really anything that moves about is just sort of grinds my girdles in an interesting way, tightens the rib cage and says, "Oh gosh, that really catches my breath." If you get my meaning.
Yes. Speaking of, you seem to have a magic item that you're wearing. It was at least near you while you were there. What is that?
Oh, this, of course you would notice it's magical. Most folks just think I'm a rather macabre type, but it's a cow's skull. Old one, but I like to wear it as my helm of teleportation. It just saves me a couple spell slots here and there, you know. It took some time to make, but it was well worth the investment and the money. Some fellows helped me acquire all of that.
Oh, that is a quite useful object.
Oh, indeed.
I never thought to use a cow skull for making a helm. That's a very unique idea.
You know, what you have is what you should use. Waste not, use every part of the bullet, they say.
Yes. So you teach magic relating to the lifeblood. You say that you specialize in teleportation magic and things that make you move. Do you have a favorite specific spell, or do you like all of the spells you know about equally?
Well, I mean, I could certainly choose a favorite. I know everyone thinks I'm silly for favoring wind-type spells. They say, "Oh, it's foolish. You're deafening yourself, or you're only cordoning off a small alleyway." But there's really something brilliantly tactical about moving a creature against its will. I mean, teleportation, of course. A Misty Step. How can you pass up on Misty Step? It's a classic. Everyone should know it. Everyone should learn how to just move small spaces. I can do it with my familiars. Let me show you. Things like that are simply done when you know what you're doing, but moving someone else is much harder to do. So I learned warding wind among all of my wind spells is perhaps a small favorite, just because it's less powerful, I think. It doesn't move others, but it does hold them at bay. And I just think it's rather fun. This swirling vortex of air around you. It's very neat.
How did you go about getting these abilities? Many sorcerers, they're not rather an innate ability. They're something they obtain, earn, or through packs.
In my particular involvement with the lifeblood, or you might know it by other names, some call it the Elan Vital, or the Red, the Odin Force. The lifeblood works for me for my particular fashion of working with it. It's a strangely interconnected sort of phase of life. Like all souls, of course, move from one place to another during the transition of life to death. It's how we reach our afterlives, they say, but there must be some means through which they travel, a pathway, a road, and the lifeblood is that. It touches all living things, even gross little nasty things, nests, dens, hives, even little crewing pools of worms, whatever swims or flies and muddles its way through the grass. Everything, bears, giants, if you forgive me, even dragons are associated with the lifeblood, perhaps in the strongest ways. That just innate ability to reach out and affect the world around them, and some other stronger creatures. I've learned my spells by reaching into the lifeblood intentionally, learning the shape of it. I believe it's somewhat it's sort of a donut. It turns in on itself in a way, but a toroid. It's hard to explain how one learns magic through the lifeblood. You just reach in and you feel it, and you learn the waves, the winds, really. Perhaps it's why I've always enjoyed wind spells as well as other connectivity spells like teleportation and mind reading.
Now, the lifeblood, it's a river that gives to many things. But I feel like that's not an easy thing to go about finding.
Well, in particular, no. Pest sorcerers, well, they call us that. Pest sorcerers, we're detested. Mostly people fear or they find us disgusting just because, well, we associate with flocks and swarms of things. I like ravens, so I'm a little more sociable than others, but some people like, they like mosses, or they like beetles and mosquitoes. I knew a student once who gave up all they knew how to gather leeches, and they hated it, so they just gave up on the whole practice altogether. It was very unfortunate. They had possibility. I told them if they just tried harder, they might get mint leaves. You know, they call it a pest plant. It's very hard to get rid of. It's very hard to learn, mostly because there's very few people like myself who study it, and because of that, far fewer who even know of it.
Do you have any colleagues that studied with you on this subject?
Yes, actually, my professor back in the day, Professor Wankminster, he was a very strict man, very stern. In fact, I've seen him throw out students from his class just for answering a question wrong or making fun of his name. I swear it happened a lot, but I was the last of 40 students in my class. It's not unheard of for him. All in all, I ended up a protege of his, and he eventually became my only real companion in the study. But I've been trying for some years to cultivate a more interested body of students. Being gentler, perhaps. I still hold out hope. Even though I know I don't have many years left to try.
Where do you teach?
I teach at the College of Heralds and Sages in the Cavortian region of Hrafntýr, Sandreep. Are you familiar?
I believe I've heard of it, yes. It seems like a rather renowned place.
Well, it's a little out of the way. It's a fairly mid-level facility, but the faculty are good, and we give the highest degree of learning. Very few people like my classes, but I am the sole practiced conjurer in the Cantic region of Cavortia. So, they have a hard time getting rid of me. They don't really try, though. They like me well enough, the faculty, anyway.
How'd you go about getting a job there? Did you have to do something significant?
Well, it was my alma mater. That's where I studied, so they were eager to have me fill in the shoes of Professor Wankminster when they learned that he was retiring. I was very sad to hear of that, but, we can only go on so long before we can't anymore. It was fairly easy to get the job. I just had to apply, and Wankminster gave a strong letter of approval. But I might not be very interesting.
No, I'm rather intrigued by all this.
I'm sorry, I'm just bouncing my leg very nervously. I still find you all very frightening. I don't really know exactly who you are.
Yeah, I think we forgot to introduce ourselves. I'm Ephraim.
My name is Ashura.
Hey, don't worry about it. You have free reign of your domain. Ashura, nice to meet you. And you are?
I'm Ephraim.
Ephraim. And the last...
My name is Rue. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Rue. Yes, I'm having a better time than I think I would expect for being no offense, but kind of kidnapped.
No, I do apologize for it. It was rather rude of us to bring on a guest and not introduce ourselves first.
They say that power begets right, so if you have the power to do it and the means to do it, then they say that that's what is right to do. But it's sort of a dangerous thing to be saying among spellcasters. Breeds all poor folk.
Have you had many encounters with spellcasters before?
Oh, yes, I have. There's the classic necromancer, but it's rather uncouth of me to say that right off the bat. But, there's just that very foul sort of stereotype. It's hard to relinquish, even in these, modern times. I've known enchanters, the worst kinds. Particular, dreaded Daniel, he was a students and eventually faculty, but we found out he was just sort of worming his way up through the system with illicit means. He's more dangerous fellows, of course. But what would you like to know?
What sort of illicit means?
Well, enchantment, of course. I mean, it's hard to see it sometimes. Perhaps it's just a sort of nature of the magic itself, but a lot of people don't really realize just how sinister it can be, just forcing yourself into the mind of someone and altering their memories or their personalities. It's kind of awful when you think about it, but a lot of people don't realize it. They sort of just bypass and say, oh, yes, of course, it's enchantment, it's very useful. And I think there's something kind of laced within the weave of magic that makes it easy to forgive. It's my theory anyway, but I'm no specialist on weave casting or enchantment.
And I'm curious on this. The amount of magic you've studied, the amount of things you have, you must have gone on some incredibly interesting expeditions to find all this. I'm assuming you didn't just read it in a book.
No. A lot of what I've learned, I've had to go out on my own. I hire companions, or I find those who are willing to delve into the most dangerous places in the world, just so that I can find something new and a new clue. Because again, I had Wankmies for some time, but even he was limited in the scope of what he knew. So, when you're researching something that very few people know about, it involves a lot of expending time and resources and distances. It's convenient then that I specialize in teleportation. I've met with strange creatures. I've met with eager people, and I've met with some unsavory types, and I've met good friends along the way.
Can you tell me about, say, favorite expedition you've done?
My favorite expedition?
Or the most treacherous? Your choice on that.
Perhaps the same thing, actually. I was always much better at this when I was younger. I've really let myself go. I've lost some of my spell, the strength of my spell work in my age, but not so much that I couldn't at least go out and try to find one last thing. I was invited to another world, a new world with a new continent to venture upon. It was exciting, getting to learn what the life looked like on another planet entirely. It was something I never hoped to do, but I found myself in a place beyond my wildest dreams. It was much more lively, much more, it was bigger and brighter and noisier than my own lands. I saw things I could never really understand, the context of which I had no means to gather a full picture in my mind of, but I found hints of civilizations lived in ways I've never even heard of, never dreamed of without seeing it for myself. I once knew a place where the Feywild and the Shadowfell worked as one, bleeding into the material plane in tandem, and it's ridiculous, the complete opposites, of course. Yeah, but you know that. You have your own. Looking around, admittedly, a beautiful plane of your own.
And I'd be more than happy to take you on a tour of it afterwards if you would like.
If that's what you would like, sure, I could stomach the trek.
It does sound like you've had your share of adventures.
A lifetime of adventures, some abroad and some at home. But the greatest adventure, of course, was both.
Sorry, the greatest adventure.
Yes. Oh, don't tell me that you don't know the greatest adventure. Everyone should experience it at least once in their life.
Well, if everyone experiences it, why would it be great?
Everyone experiences it because it is love. Nothing is greater than love. A marriage well sought and treasured, held together with strong bonds and kindness. Oh, I'm sorry to be blushing in front of you. It's a bit embarrassing.
Absolutely not. Love is a grand item. Do you have one? Do you have a love?
Well, I still do, in my heart, but well, I'm a widow now. He passed some time ago.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. I've come to terms with it. And my Gerald Button, he was very sweet to me.
Did he leave behind any treasures for you to inherit?
Only my memories.
So nothing worth.
I would think that those who guarded a realm of forgotten memories would put a little more stock into those, but no, nothing else.
I mean, I think that gold is more important than love, but you do you.
Sure, so some people feel that way. Not me. Gold is useful, certainly, but what can it get you if you don't have anyone to share it with?
But isn't that the best, though, when you don't have to share the gold with anyone? You have all for yourself.
Well, you know, what's interesting about gold is that it doesn't have any point or value until you're getting rid of it.
Why would you get rid of it?
Or to buy things, otherwise it's just sitting there taking up space, doesn't it?
That's the whole point.
I see, okay.
Well, the inherent value of gold is diminished if you continuously hoard it. Then again, same goes with the precious gemstones, and I collect those, so I don't really have a whole lot of room to speak.
But yet, the more love you have, the more valuable it is, the more worth it is keeping. And you are bereft without it, of course. But a poor man can still have love.
And if I may ask, if it's not too much of a difficult subject to come up, how did you meet your past husband?
Gerald and I, we met at a luncheon for the benefit of one of our students who was struggling with some of their student loans. The brilliant scholar student who had unfortunately lost her scholarship due to circumstances outside of their own troubles. Gerald, that's how we first met, but he was a very dashing man, and we began to woo each other on some of our outings to research various vessels of potential lifeblood pools. He protected me, and I protected him, and one step leads to another, and a sword blocked here, a spell cast there, a look in one's eye, and this gentle swift of wind pushing one's hair over her shoulder. We fell in love over a slow journey, taking our time. It was, of course, a little scandalous. It wasn't improper or anything, but it was scandalous. Professor and just somebody who didn't really belong in the school system, but I always thought it was rather beautiful. Two very unlike people coming together like that.
It is always a nice thing, having opposites attract. It's been a while since I've felt that kind of love.
He always looked best in his armor. He liked to wear a sweater most days when we were at home. Just a big baggy bushy thing. He hated to throw it out. He hated it even when I had it laundered, just because it always wore it out faster, but he always looked best in his armor. A bright brass steely thing, a helm shaped like a fish. He had a strange sense of style. I really liked it. It looked good on him.
I imagine you see many things that look good on your betrothed, even when they don't.
I've seen him looking good with things on and things off. I'm sorry.
You dog.
I'm blushing again. Let's move on from that.
Absolutely. So, you told us about one of your greatest adventures, finding a new continent, almost a new world. But what's some of the things that you found there that intrigued you the most?
Rue, you might find this interesting. Perhaps you seem of the Fey kindred. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I was born and created in the Feywild, so I have Fey magics running through me.
It's a beautiful and wonderful thing. I encountered a species of, I suppose they were a kind of centaur there who were coming from this valley of shadow and light that I mentioned. But they weren't quite horse, all they were more deer type, and I found that particularly interesting. I was discovering a society of fey creatures that no one had ever heard of before. The ancient civilizations, though, went far beyond them, and even they, as old as they were, didn't know what it meant. I found books older than, perhaps even older than mountains, kept alive and in place in a vacuum-sealed chamber, a tower of smooth bronze or platinum or something. I didn't quite even know the metal. Someone said it was adamantium or something, but I'm not a metallurgist. It was a strange metal, though. It was sealed inside the ground, and we hummed a song or something. I was taking notes of the surrounding when my friend Chenry broke open the door. I think those books have taken me years to decipher, and I think they're my most interesting find, just because I never quite found out what they meant. There was so much context and lost information. Mostly they spoke of a greater civilization that had been broken apart. But I did find the remains of some of those locations, though. Great factories roaming in the north, in the snow. And unfortunately, some teleportation circles. Well, I broke one of them. I was very broken-hearted about it. I got into a lot of trouble. They said I wasn't in trouble, but I knew I was. They hated me for a long time because of that. It's kind of the worst thing an archaeologist can do is destroy what you're trying to research.
And now, tell us about some of the greatest adventures. What are some, if I may, if you're comfortable, what are some of the lowest points you've had, either embarrassing or terrifying or upsetting?
Well, I've had my tiffs with adventurers. I've had some scuffles with of the emotional kind with my husband. I even almost got expelled for popping a bowl of soup onto my professor one time. I spent weeks that time buying favors from faculty and students just so they would keep their mouths shut about it. Otherwise, he was furious for a very long time, but he never found out. But if you mean more in the adventuring sense, more exciting stuff, I've been betrayed by a number of creatures. I had a group of Burbalang cronies following me once. I hired them to help me investigate some archaeological digs. I needed them to help, pass the words of the dead into the present. Once we found our way, they had been mostly sociable along the way, but they wouldn't listen to anything I had asked of them once we found the remains, and they just started digging and clawing at people, breaking open coffins just to get feverishly to the skulls so they could ask their own perverted questions of dark arts and insignificant things. Learning new information is so much more valuable than breaking apart things that were meant to be left alone.
But what if those things contain gold?
Well, I wasn't interested in gold. I was interested in learning the relationships that the ancient civilizations had, how they shared their society, their emotions, and perhaps I could view a brief glimpse into the shape of the lifeblood long ago. Because I know that it's amorphous. It changes its ways to the present course of life, the shapes of cities, and the way we move across the surface of our worlds and even underneath it. That's what I was trying to find. I knew a gay old flump. He was a very happy fellow. He accompanied me once, but he died quickly, of course. Well, he was a flump, pretty silly things, so I was very... That was a low point. I really liked his company. There was the time that I was almost killed by a slod.
Slod.
Yeah, a red one. They say some people say that they're the weakest kind, but well, having one gore your stomach open, I think differently. I think they're the most vicious and nasty kind of all of them. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a hard memory to come back to.
No, it's completely understandable. Thank you for giving me the info. Oh, that you did.
Well, my husband was the one who saved me that time. He almost fell too, of course. But we made it out because of love and not because of gold. Huh.
I'm sure there's several ways to solve a situation.
Well, if I had if I had a couple £1,000,000 of gold, I could have dropped it on the slot's head, but it's a lot harder to tote around that sort of thing than it is to have a beloved friend by your side. I'm sorry, I'm teasing you. It's impolite.
I had a couple questions I was going to ask, but...
Yes, Rue.
Firstly, you're a follower of a god, but if you were given a chance, do you think you would become a god? Because I ask this of most people whenever I'm running low on questions, because I like to see how people react. If you were made a god, what would you be god of? And would you choose to be a god or not?
Oh, I think the simple answer is no. I would never want to be something as awesome and consternated as a god. They have their own problems beyond what I'm capable of, and I have so many of my own that I couldn't imagine trading even the small ones for things as large as the wars and troubles and the trials and tribulations of deity. But if I was to say that I had to be a god of something, I would like to be the god of mustaches and facial hair. See, it's a lot of people, a lot of people like that sort of thing, but it doesn't come with a whole lot of, weal and woe. No bruises to mend and no sacrifices to oversee. Just keep yourself kempt and looking good. I think it'd be a very peaceful kind of existence, being god of something as small but, studious as keeping oneself looking trim and proper. I myself fashion mutton chops I have for a very long time. Gerald had a mustache, a big bushy one. I hated it when he let it grow out.
And my final question, since I am running a little out of them, what would you say the most interesting place you've visited in that new world would be?
In the new world?
Yes.
Well, I've always been partial to places underground, and everyone else, I'm sure Chenry hated it there, because that's where the hags were, supposedly, but I've always liked going underground. It's very peaceful there. I grew up underground, far, far away. I've always found it peaceful, this sort of quiet dust, and all of the wind blows in one direction. You know where you are when you're underground. Even if you don't know where the sun is or what time it is on the surface, every pathway is the same. There's not, a multitude of infinitesimal angles at which you could walk north or west or southeast or south by southwest, east, north. I like having tunnels and cave systems, so in the New World in particular, there was an ancient a dungeon of sorts under a mountain. It was the hearth, the home of some lost band of dwarves. I believe they had creatures still roaming. Spidery things of metal clinking, scraping along the stone as they walked. Sentinels, guards, we weren't sure. We didn't interact with them, but there were other creatures, of course, too. I forget what they're called. Those little elemental fellows. Big, gulping gorges with arms and 3 legs. They sort of eat gemstones and metals and such. We met a few of those. They'd been starving down there. I fed them all of my gold and copper and silver, because I didn't need it, but they needed it to survive. I'm sure it's useful to some people. Not me. I thought that place was very nice, because it reminded me of being home again. I grew up underneath a volcano. By the way, it was a lot hotter than on that mountain. It might have been volcanic once, but it was so old then that it long cooled. Perhaps that's what the diamonds were. They were glittering. Well, maybe they weren't diamonds. They were glittering stones of some kind, caressing the walls gently in some of the halls. It's a beautiful place.
Sounds like it. I'd love to go see it sometime. But I also believe that many of the places here you might find to be just as beautiful. And if you have time, I'd love to take you for a tour around. Show you the many creatures that time has once forgotten.
I mean, goodness, I think I would love that. Through the course of this entire conversation, is structured, asking and answering, I've quite forgotten that I was terrified of you when I first showed up. I think I would love a tour. If you have more of this moss or any great, bands of creatures or colonies, I would love to see what time once had to say about what the lifeblood once looked like and the things that grew out of it.
All right. Then you and I shall take our leave. Well, until next time, have a good awakening.